ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुः येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः. Very happy to be here with all the teachers of Vigyan Institute. I learned many things by talking to Rukmini Madam and other Mr. Krishna Kishore, Vice Chancellor, uh, and uh, and also I spoke to some of the SAC members. I deeply appreciate the organization of your college. I heard that the second year students, when they go to third year, they take active responsibility in SAC, isn't it? And those they give advice, and then the seniors give advice, and the juniors act, and then all the students' activities are arranged by SAC, isn't it? Similarly, I also heard that many teachers are counseling the students, taking each about 20-25 students also. So caring for them, because the college is a big college. You have about how many? 7,000 students? 7,000 students. So I was amazed how such a big college with a huge number of students are taken care. So they told me that many teachers take care of students by mentoring. So I thought I'll speak a few words about student-teacher dynamics. Based on Bhagavad Gita, you will learn many practical things in this. In the Bhagavad Gita, very first thing Lord Krishna teaches is that we don't give advice to anybody unless we are hired. Like you will see, in the beginning, Arjuna is telling Krishna, take the chariot in between both the armies. And Krishna is taking, tukuduk, 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 and he is keeping silent. And Arjuna looked at both the armies, and then he gave several reasons why he will not fight. And Krishna went on hearing silently. So from this point, we learn that the senior or a counselor or a teacher should be a good listener. God has given us 2 ears and only one mouth. What does that mean? It means that we should be very good listeners besides speaking. So Krishna listened and listened and listened. 5 reasons Arjuna gave why he will not fight. Krishna didn't protest at all. Okay, are you done? Are you done? Are you done? After he spoke everything, Arjuna crumbled. And then he told Krishna, you become my guru, I will become your disciple. And then whatever you say, I will do. When Arjuna said, now Krishna was a friend of Arjuna, now he became a guru of Arjuna. And then Krishna began speaking. So the first lesson we learn is those who listen well, then they have an extra edge in speaking. Therefore it is said we should speak in such a way that others will hear. We should hear in such a way that others will speak. Sometimes you will see sons, daughters, when mother or father is asking them something, they will say nothing. No, I have nothing to say, they will say. But when they go to friends, they will talk 2 hours with their friends. Do you know why? Because they think mother and father, they protest, they oppose, they always get into judgmental behavior. Therefore, they don't open up. But they go and open up to their friends. In the same manner, you will find opposite to this behavior is Krishna Arjuna. Arjuna is able to open up to Krishna, open his heart. It's actually called as Guhyam Akyati Prichati, we call it, which means you open your heart and speak very frankly without any fear. You see, when you take bath in the morning, a hot water bath, what is the first thing you do? You do like this, check the water heat. Not that you take a smoky hot water and put on the head. You won't do that. Similarly, before you open your heart to somebody, you check whether this person will not ridicule me, whether this person will not criticize me, whether this person will not go around talking ill of me behind my back. Once you're confident of the integrity of the superior, then you open your heart. That's like testing the waters. Like if somebody goes to somebody's house, a lady will not open the door in the daytime. If some unknown person goes, first she will check through the lens, who is that? then she will also have a chain. Hey, what do you want? Why are you battering the door? Huh? Why? Because she will, if husband is coming and battering door, she will open the door. Huh? In the same manner, we all open the door of our heart only to those in whose integrity we have confidence. We have confidence in their integrity, we will open up. Therefore, in the beginning of Gita itself, we learn that Arjuna could have such confidence in Krishna that he poured out, he opened his heart without any, like we say, being naked in front of parents. A child is naked in front of parents. Like that, Arjuna could open up. And Krishna is a very good listener. He listened well. Because when you listen well, you get the adhikar or the yogyata to give advice. Like one of my friends was telling, he went to a he was studying in one of the colleges. So he went to meet the doctor. The doctor was a very, very busy man. So when he went to meet the doctor, he entered the doctor's cabin. Immediately doctor wrote a prescription and gave him, take it. And the person said, sir, you have not heard me. Doctor said, no, when you were coming to me, you were coughing. I know that you are suffering from cough. Therefore, I gave a prescription. Take it and push off now. Next. Like that he said. So what my friend did when he went out, he crushed that prescription and threw it in the dustbin. Why? Because he was not heard. It means if you give the prescription before listening, and that will go to the dustbin. Nobody will hear it. So this is the first lesson we learn, to be good listeners. And another thing we learn is, Krishna was very wise, very intelligent, very knowledgeable. Whole Bhagavad Gita he only spoke. But he did not speak until Arjuna hired him. Like I am here with all of you because I was hired for the students program, and for this program I'm called, so I'm coming. I can't just barge into a college and say I will speak. Only when we are hired, we can speak, isn't it? Similarly, Krishna thought, I know everything, but I will not speak unless Arjuna hires me. This is a second lesson we learn. Don't give unsolicited advice to anybody unless you are hired, because it will fall in deaf ears. It is like shooting in the sky. But if somebody seeks advice, you give advice that is going to, like when there is a Swati rain which falls in a seashell, it goes in, then it closes, and then it goes inside the ocean, goes round after a long time. When it opens, there is a pearl. Similarly, if people seek advice from you, you give them advice, they gratefully receive it, and they contemplate on it for a long time, then they come out with such realizations. They are, later on you see them grow in life. You will see that. So we don't become self-appointed advisor of anybody. We only advise only when we solicit it. Another thing we learn as a superior from Krishna is, he is very empathic. What is the difference between sympathy and empathy? Anybody can tell me? Sympathy and empathy. They sound similar, no? Both are pati. How is it different? They can speak from their own places? Yeah. Anybody would like to try? Yeah. Sympathy and empathy. Any of you would like to try? There is a hand up. Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Sir, it's like imagining ourselves in the shoes of others.
That is which one?
Position.
Which one is
empathy?
That? Empathy. You are right. Perfectly right. Thank you. Yeah. Sympathy means you feel
Sympathy
pity.
is showing kindness, pity.
Showing pity. Oh, you are suffering. I'm very sorry. I think it's bad luck for you. Huh? That is sympathy. And empathy means I put myself in other person's shoes. Out of the two, which is greater? Sympathy or empathy is greater? Which one is greater? Yeah. Which one? Empathy. Yeah. Empathy means you are able to feel what the other person is feeling. And sympathy means you feel pity for his feeling. That's the difference. So when Lord Krishna was speaking about mind, controlling the mind. Arjuna was asking, oh, our mind is too difficult to control, Krishna. Mind is like a mad elephant or like a naughty child. Huh? He said, and Krishna immediately said, yes, Arjuna, very true. Mind is difficult to control, he said, but it is not impossible, he said. So first he empathized with Arjuna before he gave him the solution. So superior means we have to empathize with others. We should be able to feel what they are feeling. That is another thing. So when anyone plays a superior role, they play three roles: philosopher, friend, guide. We say three roles. So initially, Arjuna and Krishna, what were they? Was Krishna a philosopher or a guide or a friend in the beginning? He was a friend. And when Arjuna requested him, for knowledge and everything, then Krishna became philosopher. Then he completed the whole Gita. After that, Krishna became his guide. He became his guide and guided him in the battle, and Arjuna did. So Krishna is advisor, Arjuna is an actor. So actually, it's very amazing thing. It's not that Krishna became actor. Krishna never told Arjuna that, hey, you are not able to fight well, you go and relax behind, I will fight now. He didn't do that. He went on advising and Arjuna was acting. In the same manner, the teachers should be empowerers of the students. Actually, there are two ways of leading anybody. One is called as, stewardship delegation, we call it. Stewardship leading means servant leadership. So there is a big difference between servant leader and leader. See, a leader is one who tells others what to do. And this is what you should do. Any problem you have, come to me, I have a solution. That's a leader. Servant leader means he makes people do things and become independently thoughtful leaders. So the teachers have a very great task in the college, in the 4 years of students training program, how the students can become independently thoughtful. Like for example, if I have 10 people working with me, if I can make those 10 people tomorrow do their own, separately go and become leaders somewhere and do great things, that is actually servant leadership. Make the subordinate do great things and you clap hands. Recently, one director of a college in Pune, who is also one of our members, he told me something interesting which I thought I can share with you. So I asked him a question, sir, nowadays there are so many YouTube lectures of professors from MIT, USA, and also IITs. These fellows, they all have recorded lectures and put in different subjects, and students very easily download those lectures and hear them. Then what happens to the teachers in your college? I asked him. Don't they become obsolete? Don't they become irrelevant to the students? And I also asked him another question. How do you maintain the interest of the students? Because nowadays it's an age of information explosion, isn't it? Everything is available now, all across the globe. Then what special thing your teachers are able to give to the students? So then he told me something interesting. He told me that he told me that in your BTech days, you have to do one BTech project. But now we have one project for every subject, he said. Every subject they have to submit one project. Then he also said they have to give presentations. They have to have group discussion. Then we have viva voce. We have evaluation. He said similarly, so most of the things, he said the professor only teaches only 10 or 20%, he said. And the rest of the things the students put and then professor adds to that. So student goes to the library, does a lot of research, prepares PPT, and they really prepare quality work, he said. So this becomes something interesting because all students are thinking how my friends are presenting. So I will present better than that. So everybody is working hard. So he was telling that, what do you call this, madam? You told the name for this. What do you say? ICT. Yeah. ICT is? Yeah, they call it ICT, they call it, yeah. So one of the things that I learned by talking to him was this, that if we all have to remain relevant to the students, if students are already getting many materials from everywhere, all kinds of materials, there are PDFs, there are PPTs, there are videos, in all different forms, digital forms, it's available nowadays. So the students will want a teacher only if they find that, if they find that the teacher can offer me something valuable. Here comes a very important point. You can remember this PPCC formula. P means personality, another P is position, C is character, C is competence. If you are holding a very big position, people respect you. Like somebody is chairman, somebody is principal, somebody is HOD, somebody is a very senior, outstanding person, then people respect you for that position. Simply because you are holding a very big position. They know that you are authority, you have control. And another P is the pleasing personality. Pleasing personality means if a person is jovial, very friendly, very cordial, he deals with everybody, easily approachable, then people like you. And character is another thing. If a person is a man of integrity, is a man of principles, he stands for some principle, then people respect him. And how he deals with money, how he deals with life. Then last one, C is the competence in the field. If somebody is very, very expert in a certain field. So now, as I was telling you, if the teacher can empower the student to put up a presentation and appreciate the presentation and encourage the student and add some points to that, and the goal of the teacher is to facilitate the students and not only instruct the students. So you all have heard the word facilitate. So facilitate is much different from giving an instruction. So this is something, so my spiritual master always used to say, leaders means we should always ask the question, how best can I serve in this situation? How best can I serve in this situation? So if students are already aware of so many things, okay, let them present, I will sit back and watch and I will add points to that. It requires a lot of inner strength. I went to a college where they had a sensible statement on the wall. They said it takes courage to stand up on the stage and speak. That was one sentence. Second sentence was, it takes the same courage to sit down and hear. That was the second sentence. So actually, for students to sit down and hear from a teacher, it doesn't take much courage. But for a teacher to sit there and hear from a student, that takes a great courage. Because we may feel sometimes uneasy. Am I one of the students and this fellow is giving, he doesn't know much. He is collected here and there and giving, and I have to sit down here. So this is what requires inner character, inner strength on our part to be able to sit and listen. Because our goal is to empower the students. Tomorrow, when they go to the marketplace, when they go to the companies, industries, they are going to flourish based on the way they got training here, isn't it? So, therefore, you will find there is knowledge, skills, and values, we say. Skills are not very difficult to acquire, but the values are very difficult to acquire. So, I will say today about a few things about some of the values that a superior needs in dealing with a subordinate. So, one of the first values is the superior's heart should be filled with desire to benefit the subordinate, extend oneself, be willing to sacrifice one's time, energy, talent, and everything. And also the superior should always contemplate on the welfare of the subordinate. So this is the very, very first thing in our scriptures. There is a verse which says, Paropakaraya phalanti vriksha, paropakaraya duhanti gava, paropakaraya that's one more also. Vahanti nadya, paropakaraya idam shariram, four things. He says, paropakaraya, vahanti nadya means the rivers are flowing, giving wonderful waters for all the people. The trees are giving, mango trees giving so many mango fruits. They produce and they give. Similarly, the cow is producing milk and giving. So they are all in a giving mood. If you observe the world around you, they are all in a giving mood. Like you see the cloud showers, the sun shines, the grains and crops grow, and the trees, they have ripened the fruits, they yield the fruits. The gardens are yielding the flowers, isn't it? So they are all giving. Nobody is taking. And why are they giving? Because it's God's nature to give, and our nature is to get. So there's a saying in English, God gives and forgives, we get and forget, like that we say. So therefore the teacher should always be in a mood of giving and sharing. And actually, by the way, I come from a family where my father was an English professor in a government arts college. For 35 years, he was actually the HOD in the college. So I have seen him as a teacher. So not only he will teach in the college, when he comes back home, he was very enthusiastic to teach mathematics and English. Many students would come, throng the place in the evening, and he would teach them. So his goal was to take an average student and make him a distinction holder. That was his thrill, and he would do it freely without taking a single penny. He would do that very happily. Gone are those good old days. Now the times have changed a lot. So do we have the passion to train the students and make them better? Therefore, I told you the first quality. Do we think of the welfare of others? Are we ready to extend ourselves, sacrifice our time, energy? So this is one of the very important qualities of any teacher. Or do we just cut across the corners, as we say, cut across the corners and just do the minimum? Tang, the bell rings. Okay, I came into class. Tang, bell ring, and you go out. And I have done my time is over. So we can do that also as teachers, because somebody can show on paper, this is my schedule and schedule is done. Or we can go beyond the schedule and be extending ourselves, sacrificing ourselves as teachers. So you will see that great teachers actually go extra mile in giving themselves. That was the first point I was telling. And also the people who are taking responsibility for the students in their custody, they also. When I came here, I was told that many of you teachers are taking care of students under you. How many of you here? Let me have a raise of hand. How many of you teachers? You have some 20 students or so with you, and you are mentoring them or taking care of them. We have. Accordingly, I'll speak. Yeah. Oh, we have good number of them. Okay. Everybody? Oh, it's a mandatory thing for all the teachers. Oh, right. Then it will make sense, yeah. Then it will make sense. Also, you told me to say a few words about work-life balance also, isn't it? Then I can show the PowerPoint. You can give the PowerPoint. The 1 or 2 slides I will show. It will be very helpful for them. Yeah. Oh, then all the teachers do that. Because those who are leading others have to be themselves peaceful. Then only we can lead others cheerfully. So, is it coming? Okay. Actually, it's a very big slideshow. I'm not going to show you everything. Only very important slides, few slides I will show you. See the balance. One fellow sitting on this side and other side, the different things that he does. They want to balance actually. See, the right side picture shows the man is too busy in his laptop and wife is disturbed by him becoming addicted to addicted to gadgets. See the picture below, you are seeing she is becoming irritated. That means she is overusing gadgets. Overuse of gadgets leads to such irritation. And the next picture, it shows he is panicky. He is getting overloaded. It's clear, isn't it? Other fellow is in the coffin. Still he is saying, oh, there is some problem at work. He still has something to do. Even though he's in the coffin, he's still thinking there is some left work to do. You see, now the world has changed quite a bit. Many companies are cutting down costs and they're doing staff reduction also. So then the less staff have more work to do. Plus the technology has made the line between office and home invisible. Because where does the technology go? It goes with you everywhere. Therefore you find, like IT companies, if you see, they said you work from home. Everybody was very happy, I can stay at home and work. But now they are working on Saturday, Sundays also. And in the morning and evening until night also they are working all the time. So the work from home has created that type of culture now. So where is they are not able to clearly distinguish between what is work time and what is leisure time. So we all need time for 4 things you can see here. Work, leisure, self, family. 4 things. The first two are well known. Like, you need work time and you need leisure time. And then the third one is spiritual development, inner growth. Actually, the third one is what makes your inner personality very powerful, strong, by which you can actually face all the challenges of life very cheerfully, without getting agitated, disturbed. Inner growth and development. And fourth one is the time spent with family, children, siblings, and everybody. So this is a small activity you can do. Madam, I will just keep track of the time. How long time I have? Now it is 5 now, till about approximately 5:30 is all right? 5:15. 5:15 is all right? Yeah. See, if you give a grade for this, you give 1 to 4. If you're happy with your work, you're doing well, you can give 4 out of 4. You give. If you are not taking your time for your leisure, you are very dissatisfied, you can give 1 out of 4 or 2 out of 4, like that. And are you giving time for spiritually advancing in your spiritual life? Because we are not this body. Body will eventually get old and die. We are the soul. So for the progress of the soul and awakening of the soul and developing inner nourishment, are you giving time? If you are giving time, you can give accordingly. How much time are you giving? Is it 2 out of 4, 3 out of 4? And for family, your partner, children, siblings, if you are giving. So that left side you have to give marks. And then the right side, he says, rank each of the 4 aspects of your life based on how much time and thought you spend on each one of them. So on the right side you write about, actually generally there's a difference between what we want to do and what we are doing. So if there's a big difference, then you can bring about a change. Certainly there is an imbalance. So here are some clues for a workaholic. So I will not devote much time on this. This is an activity, it will take time. But I will show you some things which can help. See, there are 3 symptoms of a burnout of a person. One is exhaustion. See, this fellow, the extreme right picture, this fellow is afraid of the telephone, you see there. He has developed a fear, phobia. That many phone calls he is getting. And this madam is tired with the job. And see that fellow also, exhaustion. Another one, that means the job is not thrilling anymore. And second one you find, cynicism. Cynicism means you distance yourself from your job. That means you are detached, you are not taking responsibility. You have a very cold response. Like you try to escape your job. You think that, oh, I'm not interested. As much less I can do, that much I will do. That is cynicism. And the third is inefficacy, means a feeling of incompetence and lack of productivity. This third one. You feel that others are doing great, I am not doing at all. I am useless. I think I will be anytime given a pink slip and shown the door. That kind of fear one has. Maybe when they're cutting down. Like when I was in Seattle, they were saying in Microsoft, the last 5% people they remove regularly. And the top 5% people they promote like that. So there's always a fear of incompetence, the third one. These are all symptoms of burnout. So you look at this fellow, unplugged from technology. So these are, workaholics feel those things. So now I want to show you one thing. Just 1 minute. Okay, I will show you. I have some solution, practical solution, what I wanted to show you. This is the one. See, in just one slide, 5 ideas are given. If you implement it, our workaholism can be stopped and we can see a big change in our life. And the first one, keep distractions to a minimum. One professor was telling me in the morning, I use my WhatsApp only to respond to very important things. Other people I don't entertain at all. He was telling. So he has a discipline. Correct, no? He doesn't waste time playing with media. If you play with media, the whole life will go away. Second thing, break tasks into smaller pieces. In those days, teachers are only teaching. But now teachers have to do many more things. Correct, no? They have to manage, they have to coordinate this. So many things they have to do. Even on holidays also they have to come, I heard. Huh? Some certain holidays. I was thinking summer vacation teachers can have 3 months holidays, I thought. It's not true, no? Yeah. They get 3 months holidays? Not full. Partly they get. They have many other tasks also. So therefore, in case you feel you have a lot of tasks, then you have to cut them into pieces, like it is given there, and then do bit by bit, just like watermelon. How do you eat a watermelon? You don't eat like this. Cut into pieces and eat. Third one, prioritize work. This is morning also we were teaching this time management. And fourth one, not spend too much time talking on phone. So there has to be some control. Otherwise, if some people have a habit of talking 1 hour, 1.5 hours on phone. And delegate parts of the project to other people. There are things which you only can do. There are things which you can delegate. So these 5 ideas are very practical, down to earth. You can implement in case any of you feel you are overloaded. Because for you to be able to take care of 15, 20 students under you, and be able to extend yourself to them, then you need a very cheerful disposition. So I won't say more than this on work-life balance, because work-life balance there is a lot more, but this is good enough. So there are different type of leisure activities given. Maybe I can share this with madam. You can send it to everybody, because they will read themselves and understand. Okay. Now I will only a few. Now we will be back on our topic, which I was telling about. From Bhagavad Gita I drew 2-3 lessons, isn't it? When you are advising students, when we are advising somebody below us, we have to give them a balanced advice. Like sometimes students face challenges between entertainment versus studies. Correct, no? Sometimes students who are very poor in study, I am not connecting. Yeah. Sometimes they are very poor. They are very poor performers. They feel inferiority complex. So how are you going to uplift the morale of a student who is feeling inferiority complex? Therefore, one thing becomes very clear: the teachers also have to be like gurus. They have to be very learned. Like in one of the village schools, one student was telling, even today in the villages and towns, children go and touch the feet of guru, teachers, touch the feet of the teachers. So this boy in the village went to the teacher and he was touching his feet in the morning like this. And the teacher was saying, come here, bidi lekar aao, he said, get bidi, he said. So the boy went to bring bidi. So another boy was telling, hey, he is our Guruji, but he is smoking bidi. How can we accept him as a guru? The other friend was asking. So here is an example of how students lose respect for the teacher. Understand now? So the teacher's character has to be very high. And for the character to be high, the teachers themselves have to know what is to be done and what is not to be done. For example, how do we correct the student? For example, if we yell at the student or we control the student, then students will lose respect for the teacher. Correct, no? And if a teacher has a weakness with the opposite sex, students are the first ones who come to know it. They will easily come to know. So therefore, the teacher's character is very important. And for the teacher to be able to possess character, first they should know first what is to be done, what is not to be done. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Yadyadacharate sreshtaha tattadevetaro janaha sayat pramanam kurute lokastadanuvartate. He's telling the leader set the trend, the other people follow, he says. For example, if a teacher has prejudices, say for example, a student is coming and asking a question. If the teacher has not studied the scriptures, then the teachers will answer the question on prejudices. Therefore, they should not take extreme controversial positions. So What are the extreme controversial positions? Like if a teacher says, study is everything, no entertainment, that is one side. Another teacher says, just enjoy life, you are a young boy. Don't bother about studies. That is another extreme. Correct, no? One teacher says, without extracurricular activities, what's the use of your academics? Then they fall into all extracurricular activities. Somebody says, study is the only thing. If you crack the exams and get good score, that's good enough. You don't need other activities. Then they will not go for any clubs. Many of them take the teacher's words as, like a gospel truth. They take it like that. So the teacher should have a very balanced mindset. Balanced mindset means how, just when you are eating food, it's not that only rice you eat or only sambar you eat. There is a time for, there is also sambar, there is also rice, there is sabji, and there is also pickles, there's a sweet, different items. Similarly, a student in life requires a very good composition of multiple engagements. So therefore, one should be able to give a balanced advice. Yeah. And yeah. Like for example, some seniors say that the juniors are not sufficiently respecting them. Yeah. So now the respect for a superior in a subordinate, how does it come? It's called as command respect, don't demand respect, it is said. So what is commanding respect? Conducting ourselves in such a way that we will be respected. And demanding respect means using our authority and position and demanding, why are you not respecting me? I will fail you in the paper or something. Like that. That is demanding respect. So now, how do we command respect? That is actually winning the heart of the subordinates. Command respect. Like Duryodhana was always surprised how people love Yudhishthira Maharaj so much. He was thinking that I am actually the prince, son of Dhritarashtra. Why people don't love me as much as they do with the Pandavas? Pandavas were all actually people of very, very virtuous character. Duryodhana, Shakuni, they played vicious, people of vicious nature. So, therefore, the superiors have a very great responsibility in inculcating the values. For example, what values are needed? 4 very important values: humility, tolerance, respecting all, and not anticipating respect. These 4 qualities. Humility means not anxious to be honored by others. And just like a tree laden with fruits always bends down. You've seen that? A tree with no fruits stands erect. Just like Ashoka tree, no fruits, stands erect. Mango tree and banana tree with all, they bend, you will see that a lot of fruits, the branch bends down. Humility. And tolerance, the example is given of a tree again. If you see a tree, it tolerates the cold and gives shade. It also gives tree bark, it gives leaves, it gives fruits, it gives flowers, it gives wood for making table, it gives firewood. A woodpecker makes a hole and lives in the same tree. Tree doesn't ask him, hey, you made a hole in me, how can you live in me? He doesn't ask. If you take a stone and throw into a mango tree, he will give you 4 mangoes back. So that type of tolerance. You can see. So humility, tolerance, respecting all, including small or big. We generally respect big, but we may not respect very small ones. But if we respect the small ones, one of the aspects of respect is you allow them the freedom. You allow them to express themselves. So actually respect has more than a dozen meanings. I will not go into the detail, but these 4 qualities are most important. It is said that if these 4 qualities are cultivated, we will have a golden heart. So humility, tolerance, respect for all, and not demanding respect. So these 4 qualities, and of course, as I told you in the beginning of the talk today, the teachers have to cultivate these noble qualities, and it won't come from the sky suddenly. But actually, when we study the scriptures and search about the goal of life, There is a very clear-cut understanding. Just like the rainwater is pure, when it touches the ground, it's muddy. Similarly, we are all originally divine, originally pure. But now we have become impure. But the teachers are expected that they actually cultivate such a lifestyle that they cultivate all these noble qualities. Then they become naturally respectable by all, by everybody. Now it's time is up. I will stop here. 5 minutes I can take some questions, madam. Yeah. Anybody wishes to ask question? How will they ask? Is there a mic or something for them? Yeah.
Check, check. Sir, thank you. To hear such from such a eminent personality like you, I follow Swami Bodhamayananda ji of Hyderabad, Madhu Pandita Das of ISKCON temple. I show the videos how a Guruji can serve the society, Akshaya Patra, because I'm a professor in MBA department and I teach operations management. One of the best example. And Devi Shetty of Narayana Hrudayalaya, all these people being a doctors, he's a doctor, like Aravind Eye Hospital. So these are the great studies, sir. I visited IIM Kozhikode for 2 times. One of the program I attended is modern methods in teaching. In one of that professor was quoting, like you are telling, no sir, 50% we learn from the students. Sir, as you are telling, because students are very active, and IIMs and IITs, you are lucky to be educated from IITs, sir. We are not that much blessed with, or I am not that much capable, but after listening to them, sir, what they used to say is like the case studies in IIMs. Sir, students comes with a different solution, same problem. You might have experienced it, sir. Same case, different solution. A faculty have the liberty, or a professor have the liberty to judge the student, and one should not copy plagiarism and all, not they don't encourage. And another thing is, sir, unique solution they come up.
Yeah.
Every solution, as professor sees that, whether it is the right or the wrong side, but the solution should be unique one.
Yes.
That will, as you are telling, no sir, teacher should encourage, and he should not demand the respect. He should command out of all the qualities whatever you have.
Yeah.
Explained, sir.
Yeah. Very good point. I will tell you one true story.
Thank you, sir, for your
great
thought-provoking speech and this thing, sir. We are very much blessed with to hear such a, because whenever I used to have the time, I used to listen these speeches of these people, and Gaur Gopalji, with a lot of what you can call humorous.
Yeah.
He used to give life, this thing, changing words.
Yeah.
Sir, thank you, sir.
Thank you, thank you. You know, there is one true story in Honda company. One boy joined Honda company as a GET, in graduate engineering training. And in the first week when he joined the company, he saw this water-cooled engines. In those days, you may be aware, they started with water-cooled engines. So immediately he asked his boss, why are they using water-cooled engines? Why didn't they use air-cooled engine? And then he did some research. And then he made one whole file with all the details of how much the company can save if they go for a air-cooled engine. And he made the pictures and everything and submitted to boss. The boss became very wild. He said, hey, you are just a 1 week, you are in the company, and we all are working for more than a decade. So he dismissed him from the job. Can you imagine? But then somehow or other the file reached at the top to Mr. Honda. So the Mr. Honda actually was very impressed with the submitted file. So then he called for the boy. Then he sent it to the R&D. And the R&D people said, what this fellow says is true. Even today you will know Honda company has air-cooled engines now. So the CEO, Mr. Honda was intelligent to get back the boy into the same company. Later on, this boy went on to become CEO of Honda company. His name is Dr. Tadashi Kume. So why I am telling you, by the encouragement of a superior, even the younger ones can come up with very creative, innovative ideas, and even the superior seniors can become very inspired by that. That requires a very stewardship, delegation, leadership, as I was telling you, servant leadership. It requires a big heart for us to encourage the younger ones to perform in front of us, and we clap hands. Yeah, thank you. That is a good point. Anybody else? Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
One of my junior, he's a very intelligent guy, and he post graduation, PhD, everything, world famous US universities he did. He he has done, sir. He was to be a senior manager in the Google. He was telling there is a space for creativity.
Yes.
Suppose an junior comes, any person can come up with an idea, he can present to the next level.
Very
If
good.
they then if they okay, he has to explain why his idea is how it is going to work.
Yeah.
Then if they accept it, they can post in the intranet.
Okay.
Like-minded people can join his team. His team. Then company will also provide a space for it, sir. 20% of their working time, the company allows them officially to work on that idea, so that they form as a team.
Amazing.
Once that idea is converted as a saleable product or the service, this team who has worked with also going to get a share from that in the form of 25 or 40%, like, sir, it varies. Then out of that profit, the rest of the profit goes to the company, sir. It is the innovative culture they inbuilt into the Google, sir.
Amazing. Very thrilling to hear. Thank you. In my Guru Parampara in which I come, Brahma Madhava Gaudiya Sampradaya, we have heard that when Shukadeva Goswami, he was 16-year-old boy, when he was speaking, his guru Vedavyas was sitting in the audience and hearing. And Vedavyas's guru Narada, he was also sitting and hearing, which means his guru and grand guru, both are sitting and listening. They have no ego problem. They are not thinking that, such a small boy is speaking, if you sit, what will people say? They didn't think like that. So it shows the greatness of the great people. Correct, no? Yeah, thank you. Anybody else would like to say something? Any of you? Welcome. Yeah, please give the mic to them. Google culture is a nice one. Nice to learn that. Very good.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening. Yeah, yes, ma'am.
My question is related to work-life balance.
Yeah.
I think you have already given some tips to us to maintain. But I always had a question in my mind whenever I listen to the word called work-life balance.
Yeah.
Is it really possible to have a work-life balance until and unless we compromise something?
Good question. Actually, in work-life balance, certainly, and our priorities also vary at different sections of our life. Say, for example, you have a small baby. Then you need undivided, wholehearted attention for the baby at that time. Then that becomes top priority. Then you will have to compromise on other things. Similarly, one is newly married. Then there will be some amount of months or 1 year goes in settling the family. And then life goes on very smoothly. So the work-life balance is something which is always dynamically changing. So what I would say, about 4 generations of time management. The first generation of time management means just to-do list and just do it. That's all. Second generation of time management says that in case your to-do list is very long, 15, 20, 30 items you have to do, then you take calendar and you fill up your items in different days and weeks like that. And the third generation says that, even after you fill your calendar, some items are left undone. Then what to do? It says prioritize. It says prioritize based on what is important for you. For example, a man working in a company, if he works 2 more hours, he will get 10,000 more per month. But then children at home and wife are unhappy. So if relationships are important, then you cut down on money. If money is very important, then you can compromise on relations. So one has to see the priority, which is priority. And then the 4th generation says, your prioritization depends on your own understanding of what is important, which may be wrong. there are many off centers. Somebody thinks money is God. Some people think like that, correct? No? Some people think popularity is God. Some people think workaholism is God. So therefore they all are having off centers. It's not that your priority is right priority. So the fourth generation says, understand the true north principles. True north means what? Have you all seen the magnet? Any direction you move it, the arrow will always go towards not. Similarly, there are universal laws. So based on the universal laws created by God, for example, I pinch you or I pinch an American, both of you feel pain. It's a universal law. If you see a selfish person, you are unhappy. In America also you ask them, they also don't like selfish people. Selfish people nobody likes. It's a universal law. Similarly, God's laws are universal. So based on the universal law, we have to make priority. And then you make a work-life balance. That's the latest time management technique, the fourth generation time management. So as you said, something we have to compromise. It's a fact, you have to compromise on something. And which one we can compromise, which one is uncompromisable, that you have to find out at different cross sections of your life.
But what I feel is, if to make it 100% work-life balance, I think it should be the combination of both management and employees.
Okay.
As you were telling that if I had a child, I should compromise for my child and I should not prioritize my work.
Yes.
But again, the management should think about it that she need to be given leave so that she can take care of the baby.
Yeah, correct.
It's a two-way process where it should happen.
Correct, that is true.
So if both goes parallelly, I
Yeah.
think work-life balance can be possible according to my opinion, sir.
Yeah, you are right. Actually, in some companies they make a plan for because keeping a small tender child to work at the same pace is practically impossible, because a tender child demands a lot of time. Child is awake in the night, midnight, and in the daytime. Therefore, some companies actually give a break to the pregnant ladies and also ladies with very small babies also for a short time, and then they can again resume the work. Actually, a whole company or a whole college is like one family in one sense. If all the members, constituents, they come together along with the management, they make a plan that every member is important for us. So let every member be paid attention and their needs be fulfilled. Then I think it is not impossible, it can be done. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Now we will conclude. Thank you for the valuable time. I have delayed all of you beyond your college hours. And thank you for your enthusiastic participation. And I thank Rukmini Madam for introducing me to this college, both the students and the teachers. I can honestly touch my heart and tell you that I'm going back with more enlightenment of learning from this college, many beautiful principles, which I feel could be introduced in other colleges also. And things like, teachers caring. I know in IIT Bombay, the fourth year students are taking care of the first year students. But I've never heard that the teachers come forward. Which teacher will say that I will take care of 20 boys? It's not an ordinary thing. Like you all are doing here, it's very nice. So, and also the SAC club I liked very much. There are about 100, 200 students, I think. It's a very wonderful idea, because the students are given the responsibility. They take it as their life and soul and they do it, put their energy. So I see the Vigyan College as an empowering college. Thank you very much. Dear Chairman Sir, I'm very happy to be here at Vigyan. I only very badly miss you today. Morning when I came here, the in-charge Vice Chancellor, Dr. K.V. Krishna Kishore and Registrar, Camder, Dr. M.S. Raghunathan, and Dean of Student Affairs, Dr. M.S.S. Rukmini Madam. So they all very warmly greeted me and my team of devotees from ISKCON, and it was a very great, grand welcome. And then when they took me to the program, there were more than a couple of thousand students sitting completely pin drop silence. I haven't spoken to audience more than 1,000 generally in other places. It was a big audience, and although I am not a great performer on the stage, I am a very simple preacher, but the students were very respectful and polite. So I asked the teachers, Rukmini Madam, I asked, how are the students trained to be so well behaved? Many places students give out whistles. So then she and others told me that there is a SAC committee here, and they do many programs for the students, and it is for the students and done by the students. They plan out various activities throughout the year, and also I came to know that there are hostels for the boys and girls, and girls don't go out of the very huge campus. And such a wonderful, there is a protection mechanism for the girls, which is very important. Very great culture. And also, after my program was over, some group of students wanted to meet me. They met me and asked me questions, very nice questions. But in the afternoon, one team of SAC members came, probably around, I think, 10 to 15 of them. Each of them had very valuable questions. Question, for example, what are the expectations of parents from teenagers? One girl asked the question. Another boy asked a question about, in teenage, what are the problems you think students are facing, and what solutions would you like to give? So many such questions they asked, very relevant and meaningful questions. They also asked about how when somebody doesn't forgive us, we feel broken-hearted, so how do we take it? So there was a question about forgiveness. So I was very amazed by the kind of queries they raised. Each of these leaders, we had almost probably an hour and a half, I think, session with them. Then after that, following that was a teachers program. Many teachers attended the event in the evening. I was speaking about work-life balance and also about counseling the students. So I was telling them that I am learning something new, that in this college every teacher takes responsibility for 15 or 20 students, which is a very wonderful thing. Actually, it's ideal actually. Srila Prabhupada, our founder Acharya of ISKCON, says that like one guru gives guidance to 10 people, and those 10 people actually take care of 10 each. Gurukula was like that. In the same manner, teacher taking care of the students, mentoring or counseling is a beautiful concept it is. And the students who come from various parts of the world here, they feel very protected and sheltered, that they have somebody to connect with, which is a very nice thing. I have only seen students doing for students. As a teacher doing for students is a new thing for me. I liked it. So I was telling them that I am learning many things when I came here. And madam also shared some of the brochures and everything with me. So there I was seeing something unique, which I have never seen in the world anywhere. The Convocation Festival, where boys and girls were wearing a turban and a particular type of angavastra, and they were wearing that. Like PhD students wear one type, and masters wear another type, I think, like that they have different. So the madam told me that it is a revolutionary idea of our chairman. Instead of wearing that black color cap, which typically in any college you find people wearing. So when I saw that, my respect for you tremendously increased, because you have brought the tradition, you have preserved the tradition and heritage of India by introducing this. I want to show the photo of this to the other universities and tell them, you also start this. It's a very good idea it is. In India we can give in line with the Indian tradition. And towards the end of the teacher session, they gave me a charka, which Gandhiji used to use. I was so happy to receive it, because when Gandhiji started the Swadeshi movement, he wanted to teach how we should keep our lives very simple, and not complicate our lives with only materialism. So I was telling everybody that your chairman is really a very revolutionary personality, very thoughtful personality, and I am so happy to see the sublime principles present in his heart, which are coming out in various ways and forms. I'm very happy to be here. I heard that there is a Vigyan college in Hyderabad also. So I wish I will visit that Vigyan also and get to see more. I deeply appreciate you and congratulate you for this. We would like to have a continued connection with your college. We can do something for the teachers, something for the students in future. And in this way, we can preserve the spiritual heritage of India, which has been living in the hearts and lives of people for the millions of years. So students here are very nicely disciplined and nicely trained. I'm very happy to be here. I'm coming to this college for the first time and got to know many things. I was quoting from Bhagavad Gita, Jnanam Vijnana Sahitam Yajñatpa Mokshashe Ashubhat. Krishna says, we need theoretical knowledge, but we also need practical realization. So you are bringing many things on a practical level down to earth in this college, in the lives of students and teachers. I congratulate you, and I wish Vigyan Foundation, this college and all other colleges, a grand success in all your noble endeavors. Thank you.